pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting, January 25th, 2022. Is there any changes to the agenda?
I have none.
I have none. How about you, Mr. Campbell?
I have none.
Okay. There. We'll meet with department heads and elected officials. Sarah Doty, payroll clerk.
I'm back, so it feels good to get back in, but I'm swamped, so just trying to get things caught up and done and on the roll.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Colin Gerst, IT department.
I just keep busy like always, flying solo here the past couple of days, trying to catch up on some stuff, but nothing to report. So
It's good to see you back.
thank you.
Sheriff Lynn Denning.
Hi, good morning. Things are going well. No real major news from the sheriff's office. We have the law enforcement agreement from Mediapolis on the agenda today. And then we have, our numbers are going down this morning. We're at 70 and then 3 were already heading out. And then they were going to the state and then a couple to the halfway house and ads today. So we should be down in the mid-60s today. Still 0 out of county other than a couple juveniles. So hold strong at 0 adults out of county.
Are they on the adult waiver or?
That, yes, yes.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yep.
Carrie Johnson, County Auditor.
Good morning. We're just staying busy in the office. Cheryl's busy with the budget. So we're just, like I said, keeping busy. Real estate, accounts payable, all that good stuff.
Thank you. Jared Laster, Southeast Iowa Regional Planning.
Morning. We do have one item on the agenda, regular agenda, plus the work session talking about the ordinance update and then the new airport height ordinance. Apart from that, we have a Board of Adjustment meeting set up for tomorrow evening at 5. We have a zoning variance request to review. So nothing apart from that, just keep busy as always.
Good, thank you. Janelle Longcliffe, County Treasurer.
Good morning. We're just keeping busy, business as usual, nothing major to report.
Okay. Ken Heinman, Seal Region for Mental Health.
Morning, yep, keeping busy, talking a lot about the removal of Fund 10 on July 1st and getting everything switched over to the fiscal agent account. I know I got a meeting tomorrow about assets, trying to figure all that out, what's region assets, what's county assets, things like that, so just keeping busy.
It sounds like it's been a busy time this last couple months on that.
Yeah, yep.
Thanks, Ken. Natalie Stepner, County Recorder.
Good morning. Like the others, keeping busy. We did get all of our microfilm sent out to US Imaging so they can start digitizing that. It went out yesterday. Not quite sure how long it'll be out, but once that comes back, we'll have lots of work to do to get those uploaded into the system. And boat renewals have started. January 1st, you can start renewing your boats for this next year, and they will expire April 30th.
Thank you. Brian Carter, Secondary Roads.
Good morning. No, I'll say no snow this weekend. That required the guys to go out, so that was good. We are doing some tree clearing, a couple different tree clearing projects down on Skunk River, and then I want to mention we are going to do some tree clearing out on Beaverdale. Jim, this I think is the one that you got hit up on this summer.
Yeah.
I don't remember if they reached out to Tom or not, but I know that she's been, there's been a lady that's has at least contacted me multiple times, so just to give you a heads up, we're out there. I don't know that we'll end up with overly happy clientele, but we will clear some trees and we'll get out of there. So just so you know in case you get contacted. So, but other than that, that's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Rodney, Williams, Maintenance Department.
Good morning. Thank you. Just keeping busy. We got a lot of things going on. I want to remind anybody if they're interested, the front set project has been reposted again. So if anybody's interested in that, go to the county website and there's a link there for the plans and all that stuff, so. Other than that, just keep them busy.
Is there a new bid date on that?
February 2nd,
Okay.
yep,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Crystal Miller, Public Health.
Good morning. Like everyone else, keeping busy. Our COVID positive numbers for the county are a little bit higher than they've been. We're at 25% with 298 cases in the last 7 days. Again, that'll update again tomorrow, so I'm hoping those numbers start moving downward a little bit. Continue to give vaccine at our office. Encourage anyone who's not vaccinated or needs second or a booster dose to come see us. We do that Mondays and Wednesdays from 8:30 to 4. Currently, we're at 50% overall vaccination rates for the county.
Sounds pretty good, that 50% of us. Thank you. Thank you, James. Do you have anything to add for Southeast Iowa Regional Planning outside of our meeting after?
I don't think so. We got a couple of agenda items today and then our work session afterwards. So.
Thank you. Moving on to correspondence. See none here, and I have none. Do you gentlemen have any?
I do not.
Okay. Move on to discussion and vote. This is the compensation board's salary recommendation for fiscal year 2022 and 2023, and that would be, turn that over to Mr. Cahill here.
Thank you.
I can read this if you'd like.
No, I'll take care of that.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, either way.
Well, good morning, Shane.
Good morning.
I have a handout here for you, Shane. I'll just put it on your desk.
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Okay. And I have an extra here. I have one. Leave one to Terry. Anybody else that wants? There's a couple of extras. Right there. Anyway, yeah, report of the Compensation Commission. This year is, it was more fun than usual. And I want to thank the other members of our commission. Charles Walsh. What I like about this commission, and what I like about the law is, in Iowa, I don't know how they do this in other states, but in Iowa, the supervisors and county office holders don't set their own salaries. That's pretty neat, really. So we have an unbiased citizen group, which is the Compensation Commission, that kind of sets the goal that we have. Now, obviously, the supervisors don't have to buy what we recommend, but I just think it's great that the public really is involved in setting these salaries. You know, that's not true in every governmental unit. Some of those guys just go crazy with salaries. But anyway, our group contains business people: Charles Walsh, Sarah Schwartz, myself, Shane Wiley, an attorney there in Westbrook, Dwayne Worthy, formerly with the county, Jeff Heelan, formerly a supervisor, and Marlis Roberts, an attorney. So we pretty much covered all the bases as far as most of these people have employees of their own. Of course, I asked them too when we talk about any raises. Are you giving your people these kind of raises? They said, oh yeah, sure we are. Yeah. Anyway, we had our meeting, and it was very interesting this year. I'll start with, if you go to page 2 of that handout, this is what we had to do this year that we didn't always do. We always tried to keep our salary raises for county elected officials in line with you know, what the cost of living was and things like that. Well, this year it was different because the sheriff's departments across the state got busy and got the law amended. So this year, the state said that in setting the salary of the county sheriff, I'm just going to talk about the sheriff's office first. Mr. Glenn Denning knows that. I did that at our meeting too, because it's so important. The county sheriff, the compensation board shall, underline this, consider setting the sheriff's salary so it is comparable to salaries paid to professional law enforcement administrators, command officers of the State Patrol, the Division of Criminal Investigation of the Department of Public Safety, and the city police agencies. they were pretty specific what we had to do. And that was new, and it kind of just came down not too far ahead of our meetings across the state. So, boy, we got different, every county had different things. I wrote down here what our surrounding counties did, because I thought it was interesting. Henry County, their board, compensation board wanted 20%. They asked for a 20% increase in all elected officials. All of our elected officials will be interested in that. Lee County, that's the one that got me started doing a little research this year. They had, because I saw the Democrat newspaper down there, that their compensation commission recommended a 45% salary increase for the sheriff. 45%, if you can imagine. And 10% for all other elected officials. The Wayzata County, they recommended 18% for their sheriff, 6% for the supervisors, and 12% for all other elected officials. So there were substantial rental increases requested by compensation boards in our area and across the state. So it was difficult. Well, how would we handle the sheriff's thing? First off, we worked on that. If you go to that next page of what I gave you, you'll see my hand scratching on that piece of paper. And this was just mine thoughts on it before we had our meeting. Comparable salaries, we had to do state patrol, so I took a captain. Well, of course, there's all different salary ranges in the state patrol, but I took a captain because they had command responsibilities such as our sheriff's office had, etc. And their average, the average salary there was $118,860. That's the average salary for a state patrol captain. I also took into consideration, you see number 2, in the Division of Criminal Investigation, the average $120,280. Then, number 3, I took into consideration the salaries of police chiefs in towns of similar size to Burlington. And so I used the Burlington police chief, and the population there's 23,000. 107,640. Muscatine is 125,000. Mason City, similar population to Burlington in our county, city and county. 122,000. Ottumwa, 100,000. And Marshalltown, 127. So 127. So I just averaged those 5 comparable cities, and the average salary was 116,000. So, I mean, anybody can handle this any way they want to. This is just happens to be the way I did it to come up with what I figured was maybe an average salary for a sheriff in our county. So I took the state patrol that I mentioned, the Division of Criminal Investigation guy, and the police chief's average, 116. That's 356,000, and I divided that then by 3 and got 118,699. So I figured that's probably what our sheriffs should have been, on an average, making, using what we were told to make by this city code, or the state code. And now this has changed a little bit at the bottom, because I had, as you'll see, the sheriff's current salary is $97,000, and it should be $118,000. That was $21,000 difference, and that was a $22,000 increase. A $22,000, and that's actually what I recommended, but for the sheriff. But our board, we discussed it, and we all voted, as you'll see on page 1, for the sheriff, a 20% increase, not a 22% increase as I had put on this paper, because I thought 22% was, I thought basically what the state ordered us to do, and it's kind of a convoluted a deal, really it is. It's kind of difficult. And in fact, I was shocked when I read the article in that Democrat paper about 45% increase recommended for the sheriff of Lee County. But anyway, so we, now back to page 1. So we discussed all of that. Finally arrived, consensus of the board was a 20% increase for the sheriff, pursuant to the requirements of this Iowa Code section 331907. I felt we really didn't have any
We didn't have any choice, really, on that. And the board, and on my recommendations on the other counting office holders, correct, it was 5%. And there we were basing that on, cost of living and all that, the statistics that we get, and what we had November statistics. And it said the inflation rate was 6-point-something% at that time, and I understand December went to 7% inflation rate by the time we had our meeting. I recommended 5%, well, the board didn't buy that especially, so they wanted to go to 7%. And so we, kind of, I guess like a jury, you gotta come to some consensus. So we did on that and came to 7%, and that's how we recommended for the rest of the office holders, and we thought that would be fair. Now, we understand also that Iowa law permits the Board of Supervisors the right to decrease those recommendations if they want to. That's it's off our back and onto yours, I guess. We recommend what I set out in this, in the minutes of our meeting, which I just gave you, and I gave Terry a copy of that also, so she has that. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And the sheriff this morning did give me a handout that explaining, I guess I was so negative at our board meeting about the sheriff's raises, that he thought I needed more information. And he gave that to me today. It's the sheriff group that got this law changed. They must have hired some really good lobbyists, is what I figure. And the rest of the office holders forgot to. So maybe next year they'll have hired the same lobbyists I did.
I think Mr. Cahill's speculating.
Objection. Obviously, the sheriffs and their lobbyists argued to the legislature that our sheriffs were underpaid as compared to these other state office law enforcement people. And of course, they gave us the information, so we knew what all these people in the state offices, law enforcement agencies were being paid. I mean, we have a list of that. And so that's how we came up with ours. I'll leave this here for, if they don't, did you give this to the board, one of these?
No, I didn't. No.
Well, they can have that explanation then, because now they can deliberate on this. I'm sure that the Lee County Sheriff isn't gonna get a 45%. I would guess that anyway. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. But that's our recommendations, and we recommend again that you follow those recommendations. Any questions, Jim?
No, I don't have any questions. I just think about, I think we should table this and so we can talk about this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we typically,
Yeah, you typically do it at a later meeting.
At a later meeting.
And Shane's at home having his second cup of coffee. And Shane, maybe you could look over this handout that I just gave everybody.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much.
I'd like to add one thing. I'd like to thank Dan, and I thank the rest of the committee for the time you spent on this. I know there's better things to go out at the house than at night on some 0-degree day, so we appreciate the time you spent on this. And there's another matter in which I do have a little prejudice in. The auditor tells me Dan wants to retire from the board.
In fact, I thought I had retired last year.
No, listen, I don't think there was board action on that, so I'm not sure how this is
Well,
gonna
that's
work.
what Terry told me.
We will have to take that under discussion too, because I'm gonna be very honest with you. You've been on the compensation board for 5-6 years?
Oh, I think maybe 8.
8 years, something like that, long time. I look forward to this every year, to your presentation. It's one of the great joys of being on this board.
Well, I kind of enjoy it only because I think it's such a great governmental thing that we have, that the citizens kind of decide what our elected officials are going to be paid. They had that case in California just a couple years ago, some small town, where they had a little bitty town. It wasn't as big as West Burlington, but they were on the beach somewhere in California. And they were setting their own salaries. I mean, they're making $150,000, $200,000, and all kinds of course, the city went bankrupt, but, so I mean, I appreciate this law, even with the amendments, that they just made, so, yeah.
That-
Okay, well,
That's it.
yeah, thank you so much.
Dan,
And
I
I know you appreciate the law, and this is your opportunity.
Yeah.
That you're mostly retired. This is your opportunity to contribute to the community.
Yeah, right.
1 or 2 evenings a year.
Yeah.
And maybe a morning.
Yeah.
So I'd like you to reconsider your retirement from the compensation board.
Well, we'll see how you fellas rule on this.
The negotiation has started.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Have a great day. I told Terry I wanna, he wasn't gonna be back from wherever he was till now anyway, and I said, whatever you do, I said, don't just hand that to us, I said, we want Dan to come here. Give one of these little spiels. I so enjoy that.
Okay, now we have,
Yeah, I'll sit here so I don't knock them off.
payroll claims reimbursements
Yeah.
for 114 and 128.
Move to approve. Second.
Sarah?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Brooker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. I just about said Terry. We have a resolution for 2022-004 approving allocations of the ARPA funds. This, whereas on March 11, 2021, President Biden signed the $109 billion American Rescue Plan Act, whereas Des Moines County applied for and will receive $7,568,844 total in two transactions. The first tranche was funded by the American Rescue Plan Act totaling $3,784,422 has been received, and the second half will be received in 2022. Whereas the Moines County Board of Supervisors has reviewed county projects and requests and determined that the funds will be used entirely on county projects with one exception. Whereas based on the distribution guidelines from the U.S. Department of Treasury, the following projects have been approved for the said use funds. 1, digitizing books and documents in the auditor's and recorder's office to electronic images, transfer books, supervisor's minutes, survey notes, deed books, mortgage books, microfilm deeds, grantee books, and plat books. The Health Department building include the purchase in the property and construction. Phone system for county offices, the sheriff's RMS and CAD system, and the Danville Telecom to expand broadband into unserved areas in Des Moines County for $355,000. And be it resolved that the Des Moines County Board of Supervisors endorses the distribution of the American Rescue Plan Act for the items listed and authorizes the auditor to make these payments as they are presented.
I would move to approve that with a comment, clarification as to where the county said it applies for those funds. Counties didn't apply for those funds. The U.S. Treasury basically contacted us and said, what's your bank account information so we can transfer it to you. So that's how we applied for it. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, I motion to approve. Second.
Sarah?
Tom Brooker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Okay, we have on the board You have heard at least on this.
And I would, well, and I have no problem with that memorandum of understanding. I've read it at least twice, and I know you've read it. We were waiting at getting it to the county attorney, just so she can bless it. I don't say, so I would move that we table this just for a week, and we didn't get it to her in time, and she's had much time. I know she's busy, so table it and put it on the next week's agenda if we could.
That's totally good with me. I've got to watch out which one of these here stamp. I came in this morning and Miss Doty said she needed to talk to me. I used the wrong stamp on several items.
Uh-oh.
She had to reprint. So, okay, approval of contract with Southeast Iowa Regional Planning for the RFQ process, assistance for construction and management of the architect and engineering service for what we've done on the new health building. And it's for $5,000, $2,500 upon contract initiation and $2,500 on completion of work.
Motion to approve. Second.
Sarah?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. I don't know about Zach, but Jared was sweating a little bit over there for a minute. We have final plat resolutions for the 2022-005 Sunset Ridge subdivision.
This is one where, quite frankly, I'm amazed that name hadn't been taken already. That seems like that would be something that somebody would have used by now, Sunset Ridge, but it's not gonna be used again, so, this is a 3-lot subdivision, at the south end of the county, north side of 61, heading towards Lee County. So it's an existing, fairly large, property that's being split 3 ways. The person who currently owns it purchased it last year, owns some adjoining farmland to the south. He intends to keep lot 3, which is technically landlocked, but it would be adjacent to land that he will continue to own and farm. That's the 55 acres at the west end of the property. Lot 2 contains a house. There's already a buyer set, ready to go with that one. It sounds like they're interested in possibly tearing down that existing house and building a new one, but in any case, it will be used for residential purposes. And then lot 1, the one closest to 61, is about 27 acres that will be purchased by a nearby landowner who will continue to farm it. So really only lot 2 was the only one that would be developed, and technically it would be redeveloped with a new home. One complication that initially came about with the survey here is that there's a strip of land about 100 feet wide where the driveway accessing lot 2, for many years now, that was actually been owned by the power company, ITC Midwest. There used to be a transmission line there years and years ago, and while that is no longer the case, it remains in their ownership. And while were not willing to sell, they were receptive to granting a formal easement going forward, which would allow the adjoining property owners the right to continue using that driveway for access. And that easement has already been recorded, and it's noted on the plat that strip would be used as the access for lots 1 and 2. In terms of the comments received as part of the review process, the NRCS did note that there is an area of CRP land at the south end of lot 2, still enrolled in that. And it's my understanding that the planned buyer for lot 2 is aware of that. That would still be in place until it expires. So just as with previous cases where we've had CRP ground on a property, we've included a condition on the resolution just acknowledging that a portion of Lot 2 is currently enrolled in the CRP, and if that ground were to be disturbed before that agreement expires, then that would not be the responsibility of the county. That since we have informed the subdivider of that circumstance there going forward. And then apart from that, just the usual condition we've added, since it's potentially going to be a new home developed on the site, that they would need to have a septic system installed, a permit filed before construction, and then have it constructed and installed before the home is occupied. So with that, we would recommend approval of Sunset Ridge subdivision with those two added conditions.
To approve. Second.
Sarah?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. We'll sign these after the meeting. Okay. We have approval of two quitclaim deeds, portion vacated Sullivan Flew Road, section 29, T69N -R2W. Brian, do you want to address this?
Not a lot to address. This was some, I guess, old abandoned right-of-way is what I would refer to it as. It's a bit more of a front yard to a certain extent than it is county right-of-way, but there's, you know where Sullivan Slew's at. Sullivan Slew's had 3 different alignments in this location over the history. 2 of the old alignments are long gone, but they used to be out near a house. And we've been working on this for probably 2 or 3 years with landowners out there. The people that did own it couldn't get along with the neighbors, so eventually that was sold, and now they get along. So in the end, they're basically small unusable pieces that kind of serve as extensions of the 2 neighboring properties. So they agreed to split line. The survey's actually already been filed for the survey of the parcels, and so this is the quitclaim, and it still leaves plenty of right-of-way to the existing paved road. It just disposes of, when the county did all this, they basically bought an entire 3.5 acre piece of ground that somebody didn't want to sell a piece of, they just sold the whole thing. So we didn't leave any remnants. This will transfer it back really to the adjoining landowners that already take care of it. And it's a smart thing to do. You know, if it were an usable piece, we'd probably be going through an auction process, but they're not usable pieces. So, so I would recommend approval, and really the remaining part of this process is for you to approve it, and we'll get it recorded, and that'll button it all up, other than the landowners will be paying for, each of them will pay half of the survey cost that was incurred to survey these parcels. So I would note that.
Motion to approve both quitclaim deeds. Second.
Sarah?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes.
Thank you.
Terry, do these get stamped as well as signed?
Don't
No.
stamp them.
Don't
Yeah, they
stamp
don't
them.
get
I
stamped.
didn't think so. But you and I just signed them.
Yeah, you guys, you stamp them, they get notarized, and then they naturally handle the recording side of it.
As long as she doesn't reject anything.
I hope she does.
You. Unless he stamps them in my spot,
Yeah.
and then I'll charge it on stamp fee.
Recorder's real pain.
Here we have the approval of the Minneapolis law enforcement agreement for fiscal year 22 and 23. Kevin, do you want to address this?
Sure. So Des Moines County, through the Sheriff's Office, provides law enforcement services for the cities of Minneapolis, Danville, and Middletown. This will be just the fiscal year 23 contract for law enforcement services. What we do each year is just calculate our ongoing costs, anticipated costs for wages, insurance. We calculate everything in from costs of equipment and uniforms and vehicles, gas, all that. And we arrive at an hourly rate, and then we contract with the towns for their needs of law enforcement services. It's a great relationship because they don't necessarily need to have a full-time law enforcement service, but through the Sheriff's Office, we're able to provide 24-hour service, and it's we're in and out of the towns constantly throughout the day and night. So it's a great relationship. I think everybody's happy with the contract, and this contract would reflect about a 4.2% increase in costs from last year, and those are just anticipated costs for the next year.
As an aside, I sat through a presentation in ISAC some years ago, and they were discussing that incorporated towns or cities have to provide law enforcement, even no matter how small they are. And if they don't have somebody do it, that sure falls on the mayor. So
Yes.
I don't think there's a lot of appetite for that, so.
So throughout Des Moines County, we would always respond to all emergencies, but there are other calls like nuisance complaints and harassment complaints and those kind of things, so we're happy to provide that service.
Yeah, I know you are, and I think your customers appreciate that. I would make a motion to approve it.
Second.
Sarah?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Okay, next we have the approval of the Acme Local 2205 Health Department Tentative Agreement. Following contract, the parties agreed to the current contract.
To the lower right-hand corner, I think.
The term and condition of this agreement shall continue in full force and effect commencing July the 1st, 2022, and terminating June the 30th, 2025, unless the parties mutually agree in writing to extend all claims in the agreement. Upon termination agreement, all obligations of this agreement are automatically canceled. The party agrees to 3.75 across the board, effective July 1, 2022, 3.25, effective July 1, 2023, and a 3.25 across the board increase effective July 1, 2024.
Sounds fair. I move that we approve.
Second.
Sarah?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Now we have the approval of the Acme Local 2205 Secondary Roads Tentative Agreement. And it's the same reading as the other. If you want me to read this, I will read it.
I think they're identical, aren't they?
They are identical.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Sarah?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. We have personnel actions. Whoops. Left Sarah's in there, we're getting it out here. First one is for the auditor's office. Sarah Doty, first deputy. It's an anniversary 12-month step increase. Previous rate $49,807.92. The new rate is $53,470.27.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Sarah?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yep.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Then I have two of them for the sheriff's department. The first one's for, is that Eric Michael Kramer? Or what?
Yes.
Eric, okay. And then Lynette Marie Van Sock. Both of them are reserve deputies, and their salary is $1 a year.
Pretty good rate.
Sounds like a bargain.
Yes.
Motion to approve. Second.
Sarah?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Now, if you had us three guys there, that'd be overpaid. We have reports for the jail stats for December of 2021 and the sheriff's monthly report for December of 2021. And these will be on file in the auditor's office for your convenience to read. And Terry would be glad to show them to you. Is that right, Miss Johnson? We have the minutes for the regular meeting on January the 18th, 2022.
Motion to approve.
I'll second it. I think we lost him. Sarah?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey,
Yes?
Shane McCampbell.
Yeah. Oh, we thought we lost you.
We lost you, Shane.
I'm still here.
Okay, now we're gonna canvass the results of the Two River Levy Drainage District election. Huh?
You got one.
Man, they got this filled up 14 different ways.
This is unsafe.
They're pretty security minded at Two Rivers.
Well, I'll tell you what, gentlemen, it's gonna go this way.
I think I'm gonna.
You need a sharper knife.
Yes, I do.
Don't cut yourself.
You get a letter opener?
Sound like my mother.
Okay, we have this was the Two Rivers election held in Kingston on January the 8th, 2022. Got the Fiscal machine. Tally sheet. Well, I might have to get Terry up there to help me out with this.
The drainage districts are in charge of their own elections, so
What's that?
I said the drainage districts are in charge of their own
Yeah.
elections. So they probably have all the ballots in there, and I think what you usually do is you count the ballots and make sure that it comes out the same as what's in their tally book.
Okay, well, they've got Kurt Siegel, they've got 21, and Dan Lance got 20.
How many were they elected? Two?
What does their ballot say?
Just two of them, then it's got a place to write in.
Oh.
Yeah. These things are slow. I wish they had that paper that thick paper, who give us that thick paper but well, you wasn't here. Somebody give us some awful thick paper.
I would say they had a pretty good turnout, if they got 21
They
ballots.
got 21 ballots, yeah. Are there any votes at all for anybody else, Jim? I don't think you need to count them if it's just pretty much unanimous. Then an abstention on one of them.
Yep, they're all there then. One of them's only got one vote. Here, I'll let you go around these.
No, thanks. Motion to approve the Two Rivers Drainage District election.
Okay. We'll approve this tally sheet here, right?
Or you can just stamp the outside of the envelope, either one.
Outside the envelope, do.
That's fine too.
Good.
We have to store that forever, so it'll be with all the other election results.
Do.
Yep.
Did,
I thought I heard Shane say something, but.
yeah.
Oh, Sarah.
Shane, did you second that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Tom Broker?
Yes.
Shane McCampbell?
Yes.
Jim Carrey?
Yes. Now we have the canvas of the results for the Burlington northbound levy drainage district election. Okay. What is the balance for Burlington North Levy District today? Ballot, Tom Williams. 3. Looks to me like they only had one person on the ballot.
Usually not a rush to fill those positions, is
No,
there, Jerry?
I think they only had 5 ballots for their election, so. Of course, the north bottoms, that pretty well takes care of like around pace, so it's kind of limited on
Yeah.
the number of people.
That will be Mr. Tom Williams. Is the winner. He ran against herself.
Congratulations, motion to approve.
You there, Shane?
Yeah, you guys can't see me?
No.
Well, we saw a hand for a while.
Huh?
We saw a little hand sticking up like that for a while. I don't know what that was about.
You second
Using my
this?
computer for the first time, and I couldn't see my box either, but,
I see your name now.
you should be able to see me. Anyway, sorry about that, I thought. I was
Don't be
wondering
sorry about it, it's been kinda nice.
You gotta cover at the very top there, Shane. You just gotta swap the color off.
Shane, did you second this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Sarah?
All right, Tom Broker?
Yes.
Shane McCampbell?
Yep.
Jim Carrey?
Yeah. Before we move on to other business, I see Chris Lee came in late. Do you have anything for conservation, Chris?
Just that our staff's gonna be gone. We have our annual winter training, conservation department training up in Coralville, so we'll get that this week.
Thank you. Any other business?
I have none.
I have none.
Oh, there he is.
There he is. Hey.
Oh, look.
There's a little thing on the computer.
You're looking good, Shane.
Sure, pal.
I'm glad you combed your hair this morning.
I did it just for you, Jimmy.
Future agenda items.
I have none.
I have none.
None. Committee reports.
I just got workforce, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm just gonna say I have none.
I said workforce development, and they still need some bodies for jobs, and they're having some issues with their building, but nothing new. And then I had community action, just finishing up their budget. They're having some budget issues, but not as far as spending, just as far as lining up the money that they have coming in with dates, as far as their fiscal year and the money that they come in. But the thing is, I do want to say that community action needs staff. They're like 22 or 23 people short on staff for Head Start. So if there are people that know anybody that are looking for a job, Head Start is hiring. You can work with some wonderful little kids. I've been up there to visit them, not recently, but and they'll grab your leg and snot all over you. It's a wonderful thing. That's it.
Well, thanks, Shane. I have nothing. Public input. Anybody from the public wants to call in, we'll give you 2 minutes. You can call in at 319-753-8203, extension 4, or call board at dmcounty.com. That's call in at 319-753-8203, extension 4, or board at dmcounty.com. We'll give you 2 minutes.
It's supposed to be cold tonight, isn't it, Sheriff? So if you're gonna be out on the highway, you should have if you have to be, you should have a blanket and gloves and a hat maybe.
Come prepared, yes.
Come prepared.
Roll your windows down so you get acclimated.
Maybe there could be a delay to work tomorrow.
Delay to work. I'm sure.
Is that just like the person that I got a call many years ago that wanted to know if her court date was delayed because of fog, because the school was delayed by fog? I go, I don't think so. I said, I drove 20 miles to get to work. I think you can get down here.
Or it could be the lady we had that, she kept faxing her photo ID and it was black, you couldn't see it. So she asked Jenny, she's like, well, can I just FaceTime with you? So then that's how you can identify me. No.
Gonna need a copy of that ID.
Yeah, FaceTime doesn't quite do that.
When I was an iron worker, I was complaining how cold it was, and my feet were cold. The foreman looked at me, he said, you kids don't know anything. He said, put a little water in your boots. He said, your feet will keep the water warm, and your water will keep your feet warm. He said, go back to work.
Lots of sympathy.
About done here. Okay, time's up. With an aye, we're out of here.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody, for putting up with us today. It's nice to have somebody up here with me. Okay, we're back with Southeast Iowa Regional Planning to go over our zoning ordinance that where we left off on the sewer and water on 118 and 22. We was down to sewer and water requirements.
Well, that one was just looking, just an acknowledgement that it streamlined all the references to sewer and water through the ordinance, just to make it clear that that it defers to the health department on like certain situations that there would be some flexibility there, where we have our like minimum standards related to lot size, 40,000 if it's 40,000 square feet if it's private septic, 30,000 if it's there's a public sewer access. So just allowing for it to be somewhat flexible in the sense that if ordinarily those conditions, like for lot size, that's a standard requirement, but for like a larger development, that the health department has discretion on ultimate approval of whether a sewer system is appropriate for the proposed development. So rather than having arbitrary standards or regulations that vary depending on the district or type of development, that it ultimately, because it's a lot of what we do in terms of zoning permits is when there are other permitting agencies involved, DNR or other county departments, secondary roads, health, that there are permits that need to be obtained there. We're the last stop when all those other things have been taken care of. We can confirm that they're, in addition to our own zoning requirements, that complied with all the other applicable requirements as well. I think next I wanted to just quick address there's always been a chapter on telecommunication towers. That's Division 95, page 50. I believe there was a legislation related to this in the 90s about local regulation of telecom towers as those started to become more common with regards to how local communities could regulate those. I know we've discussed looking at how to address wind farms and like commercial wind and solar farms. This is somewhat similar in that we're, with wind farms at least, in that we're looking at tall structures. However, in that case, in the case of the energy infrastructure, we'd be looking at a possible standalone ordinance to address that, whereas this has always been a part of our zoning ordinance, so it would continue to be used strictly for regulation of these installations in the 2-mile zoning area. One thing that was a little strange initially with the zoning ordinance is that these were only permitted in the A1 district, which is the agricultural, and I think the logic there was that those would just be situated in areas where there's not any development around, so there'd be kind of a natural buffer around that. However, they were already considered a special permitted use in that district, which special permitted use meaning that that goes through the Board of Adjustment, so it's more of a context-based thing as opposed to it's just allowed anywhere within that district. You'd have to have a public hearing, notify neighboring property owners, and then have the board evaluate whether the conditions are appropriate for it at that location. So we figured that in looking at other ordinances, other communities where those are handled in a similar way as special permitted uses, but why are they just allowed only in the A1? So we changed that so that it allows C1 and I1 as well. So these are the commercial and industrial districts. So basically everything except residential, those would be permitted, since the impact to commercial and industrial would be no different than agricultural. The main thing is just that residential areas, that those not be situated in large residential areas. I will note that a similar thing, I don't know if I put it on the staff report here about electric substations. that's another one where there was a, up until now, the requirement has been that large utility infrastructure like a substation for electric are only allowed in the A1 district as a special use. Now that's one where those types of infrastructure are really, there's the idea that those should be regulated based on what the surrounding land use is seems a little extreme, considering that this is the standard infrastructure that's used to serve the community, and that in that case, while it makes sense to have it as a special use, so that there's a chance to determine whether a given location is appropriate with the Board of Adjustment. It seems appropriate that those should be allowable in any district, even residential, just so long as there's the chance to assess the given location. And so in that case, we're proposing changing that so that I think the language that describes it as utility stations, like electric, gas booster stations, something like that, would be allowable in any district as a special use. I will note there was an example we found where I believe it was probably almost 15 years ago now, where ITC developed a new substation off of Washington on West Avenue, right next to the IAAP there. So it's right at the edge of, so City of Burlington, north of West Avenue, county south. They built a substation there, and we found that at the time, the county went through the process of rezoning it from R1 residential to A1 to allow this substation, which in hindsight, because when we first reviewed the zoning map, it seemed odd that whole area was zoned R1 except for this one property that was ag, and it already had a substation on it. So in hindsight, that seems a little silly that in addition to going through the special use permit process to assess that location, that they also had to take the time to rezone it first, when especially when it's changing it from agriculture and it's only one property that's not even ag anymore. So that just seems like a good case study there, that hey, this is probably makes more sense to just have them as special uses in any district, and they can be assessed individually based on the local conditions as opposed to what district designation it is. So we can move on to the site plan review. So this is getting into the section of the ordinance that deals with permits, administration.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Why do you change the height restrictions on the utility side of it?
Which one is this? Let me see.
If I'm in the right spot, I think it was on what you were just
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about.
So this wasn't, I didn't have this in the summary of for the staff report.
I'm just curious. Most of the stuff you've done has been more flexible. I didn't know what the logic was.
I believe we had reviewed other ordinances on how those those telecom towers were typically regulated. So is it previously a height greater than 500 feet was allowable as and again, that's some of the terminology there that was kind of confusing, that it was treated as a special use, but they also referred to a special exception to allow a height of greater.
Capped at 750 before, and now you're
Right.
saying it's capped at 500. I was just wondering why.
Well, because we had reviewed a number of other ordinances, and it was rare to see anything greater than 500 feet. So I think it.
I thought FAA regulated that stuff. We were within a radius of an airport, a mile, 2 miles, whatever it is that there was, and maybe I'm wrong.
That would be our next ordinance.
Well, that's
Wait.
This is
Okay.
this is not specific to
I don't know that
airports.
they do that unless you have an ordinance to enforce it.
I mean, with the FAA, I thought there were circles around airports that said you can't have anything.
Well, this would apply in the north part of the 2 mile area too, which is not relevant to the airport ordinance. So this is a case of just in terms of the visual impact of the surrounding area, that it seems like anything above 500 feet would not be something that would be desired unless you feel that we should have it keep it as it is.
Well, I was under impression, so you're making changes not just based on comments and stuff, you're making changes based on what you've seen in other people's policies and what you think it should be.
What seems to be the commonly accepted standard.
Well, it's a special use situation anyway, so wouldn't that be part of the application if we're gonna put in a tower that's 500 feet tall or 700 feet tall?
It would have to be, must have had to have been that way in our current one, because it says that 500 was acceptable and you could possibly get it permitted up to 750, so that would fit what you just said. This one would rule out anything for that. I don't know why it would need to be, I don't know what the heights are, I just saw that and wondered what the logic was behind the change. That you've explained it, I just wanted to know. So.
Yeah, I mean,
that's why I'm bouncing from what
Sure.
you're going through to this,
Sure,
because
sure.
this is more detailed.
Okay.
So.
So into the section on site plan review, which is Division 110, page 59. So this is the section on administration and review. There's the section on the zoning commission and the board of adjustment. So this specific section deals with zoning permits where it is, and this is the way it's always been, that there's a review process with the zoning commission in addition to the simple process of giving a permit to the administrator. So in this case, it allows for more review up front to determine whether certain, and in this case, whereas a special use is with the Board of Adjustment is assessing whether a given location is appropriate for a use within a district where it is assumed that ordinarily it wouldn't be desired. This is one where we're dealing with uses that are permitted by right in that district, such as a larger multifamily development in a multifamily district, or a larger commercial or industrial development in a commercial industrial zone. So these are uses that are allowed in that district. So that's not in question. It's just the site plan review process is a way for that to be assessed in more detail to make sure that elements of that project, like drainage, roadway access, just things like that are addressed up front. That are appropriate for that development. So previously there were some somewhat arbitrary conditions for what would require a site plan and not, meaning would the administrator be able to approve that, just making sure that it meets the certain requirements and that's it, or does it have to go through this process where there's a public hearing with the zoning commission to review that development in more detail. And so I believe that originally it was based on the square footage of buildings, if it's a commercial use, and then anything that's industrial would have to go through that process. So number one, there's some issues with terminology that we cleaned up here, where previously site plan only referenced instances where the zoning commission is involved, whereas technically we require a site plan, meaning a drawing of the proposed development for any zoning permit. But so in order to distinguish, the ordinance now lists them under the separate titles of minor site plan and major site plan. So the minor site plan would just be the standard process that we go through administratively for a permit, whereas the major site plan is when there's the zoning commission review for a larger development, and it now specifically indicates which types of uses would be applicable there. So multifamily dwellings with more than 8 units, mobile home manufactured home parks, and then based on certain criteria instead of just the mere square footage of the building, because that doesn't necessarily tell you a whole lot in terms of what the impact of that development would be. So any gathering places likely to generate significant traffic on a regular basis, such as churches, meeting halls, country clubs, any uses involving overnight stays or lodging, and then any commercial use in the C1 district. So there is this one instance where it's a building about 15,000 square feet, so it was originally 10,000, so there's a little bit more flexibility there. Any commercial use with dispensing of flammable or otherwise hazardous materials. And then any as before, any use permitted only in the I-1 district. And general uses of a generally industrial character, which would include things like junkyards, outdoor storage of materials like that. And then in addition to the specific categories there's also a list of information that is requested as part of that major site plan review with the zoning commission, just so there's more information on in terms of traffic accessing the property, the parking, the utilities serving the property, what the drainage would be like, specifically looking at the topography of the property. So that's trying to make it clear, more streamlined in terms of which developments do require that additional level of oversight before final approval, and then what information is necessary, just so we don't have to keep, if somebody on the commission has a comment about utility that wasn't shown on the site plan, we don't have to, we'll table this and come back later once that's been submitted. So it addresses all those potential topics of concern up front. Make sure they submit that before we go through the process of reviewing that.
Darren, question for you.
Go ahead.
Under, yet again, on the one that's more thorough.
Sure.
Under uses exempt from permits, it looks like you're getting more strict about the size of building that they'll have to permit for accessory buildings.
Okay.
And I think, first of all, you should change that to square feet instead of feet, if I'm reading it
Oh.
right, as far as the units for what you're saying.
Okay.
But I just wonder why you're shrinking that.
That was 150 feet, right?
Went from 168
Yeah.
square feet to 150 square feet.
That 150 is what the city of Burlington uses, and we've seen other communities that have that as well. And in that case, I think another key component there is that the 168 seemed like a pretty random number to be using for something like that. So we figured if it's commonly used as 150 and it's a more nice round number that's more memorable, I think that makes more sense.
Is 168
Yeah.
square feet, but
I don't think random matters when you're talking about a policy they have to comply with, first of all.
Yeah, I don't think it's any secret that my default position is not to make things more restrictive without some sort of a reason. And I don't think reducing it by 18 square feet. Anyway, I would lean toward just leaving that particular number alone. Somebody had an idea when it was originally went in there.
That's the problem. We don't really know the whole story about why.
We don't know where the 150 came
was.
from either.
No,
Like I said, I'm
Well, I'm
more
thinking just
strict.
in terms of a user-friendly thing and being able to say what if there is an exemption, just to be able to say. There's the concern there that what if somebody misremembers that and we get something that was built that ends up being over that, and then it's like, well, is this supposed to have gotten a permit or not?
That's not gonna matter whether it's 168 feet or 150 feet.
Yeah.
I'm.
We're user
I'm
friendly
with
because
Sam.
we're nicer than Burlington. My other question on the next page, under that section H, blah, 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 under a bunch of DNR stuff, it says you guys are kind of getting out of the business of requiring local permits because some of that's taken over by the DNR. But in the last line, you say, accordingly, Des Moines County will no longer require local permits for these activities, but will be responsible for ensuring the state level permits are complied with.
talking about drainage.
when you say complied with, we've talked all along that really once you get through a permit process, there's really not a process that you spend time going back out to facilities. So do you mean obtained when you say complied with? Like, yeah, we're not gonna do local permits because there's DNR stuff required, so to get through our process, you're gonna have to go get your DNR permits? Or are you truly saying that you're gonna go out and review to make sure they're complying with DNR permits?
They would have to get a DNR permit. Basically, we wouldn't allow our permit until they give us a copy of whatever.
So you're
they got
saying
from the DNR.
obtained?
Yes.
So I think you wanna reword that, because your language says that the state level permits are complied with. And complying with it means that your site is built to the permit level, and that you're gonna go out and make sure it's built to the permit level.
Well, there was we had a discussion with somebody with DNR about that, where the issue was about how much realistically the amount of permits they get and how they're able to go out and actually enforce that.
That's their problem, not ours.
So I was thinking more in lines of if something seems, if we notice something in our own inspection that seems off, that we could.
I'm not supportive of any county office taking over review for the DNR. They're a pain in the ass as it is.
You got that right.
I've dealt with them once or twice.
So, I just think you meant, what I think you meant, I'm assuming, is that you wanted to make sure that they got the proper permits.
Well, yeah, that definitely.
So, but
I'll have to look at that.
the way it's written, it suggests you're going out, and I don't think you have the manpower, and I'm not sure that's what we wanna do.
Yeah.
So, at least something to look at and talk about.
Damn ditches that he doesn't go through there. That's before I knew Carter.
Good old days.
Life was simpler.
They told me that them ditches wasn't built for a retention center. And I said, I understand that. I said, but they're holding water. Well, how come they're holding water? I said, talk to the county. They're the ones that where the water goes in that creek down there.
That's all I had on that. Thank you.
Thank you. This next item about enforcement and penalties, this is something that we addressed to streamline across all of the ordinances, including the floodplain.
I think that was recommended by
Trent.
Trent at the attorney's office.
Basically, we previously we had some number one, we don't think it's a good idea to specifically say what the violation, what the fees should be in the ordinance. Otherwise, we think it's more appropriate to have those set by resolution. That way it's easier to change it if we decide later that amount should be adjusted, as opposed to having to do an ordinance amendment to do that. So instead, we simply mirror the state code requirement of what the maximum would be for the first offense or for a subsequent offense. So $750 for the first, or $1,000 for each subsequent.
Right
so
now, it's just $100.
Yeah.
Maximum fine for how many ever offenses you've got.
Right. And so that gives flexibility going forward, that can be based on an assessment of conditions year to year, as opposed to just having it set down in the ordinance as a certain amount.
How often do we enforce that?
Not very.
Well, mostly it's situations where people don't realize they need a permit, and so the violation is simply building without a permit, and so that usually, once they understand what the requirement is, they're.
But then they're stuck with the fine?
Yeah, just that initial fine.
I would hate for that initial, whoops, cost me $750.
Right. Well, because our current policy is just double the current fee, which is 25 to 50. So then again, that would be something we would set by resolution through the board.
That looks like a huge jump. Like you said, you don't have very often, and typically it's a mistake.
Well, what we're saying here in this case, and it's the same with the other ordinances as well, is that this is just saying, this is what state code allows us to do. It's not saying we're going to do this, and it would ultimately be up to the board's discretion what that fee rate should be. And so instead of just saying here's what it's gonna be up to and including, or just setting a certain threshold that we can't cross, or we, at any point, that limit, that creates potential issues for the future in terms of if we ever decide to change what it is. So
Has that
this-
maximum changed, Jared?
What?
Has that maximum fine allowed by state code changed in the past?
I am not sure. I only know what it currently is right
I would
now.
assume it changes from time to time,
Well,
but I have no idea.
so I only ask because you're sitting here saying we run a resolution through the board for whatever the board wants to set as regular fines. Why don't you just reference the code section, just say maximum penalties levied will be per code section whatever in here, and that way if the code changes, you don't have to change the ordinance, and then reference penalties for Des Moines County are established by resolution number whatever by the Board of Supervisors, or just by resolution as established by the Board of Supervisors, and the board will pass the resolution for the actual fines within Des Moines County. Then you,
This is what Trent.
oh, this is what
Yeah,
Trent.
Trent advised us to put it in this way.
Well, I'm fine with it. I would agree, you don't wanna put fines in an ordinance. You wanna put them into a resolution, you wanna refer to the resolution so that you have easier time.
I know the county attorney, when they redid, updated ordinance number 6 that had the penalties and fines and all of that stuff, is because some of the things had changed in that, so.
So basically, we would come back at a later time with the
Does-
fee structure, with all
Does
the
it-
permit fees and penalties and everything.
Does it need to reference the code number?
It does in the actual,
And I mean, in the ordinance, it
it
says.
says any violation of provisions of this ordinance or failure to comply with any of its requirements shall constitute a county infraction as defined by chapter 331.307.
So it references it right there.
And then it lists the
It
actual,
basically states what
and
that
it
chapter.
states what it says in there, yeah. Again, that's what Trent, how he had, we kinda went back and forth with him, and this is how he advised us to put it
And
in
that's
there.
probably basically so that people are aware of the possibility of what they can be fined. Because they might look at that and say, well, how do I find out what chapter 331.307 is?
Where do I find that?
Yeah, and that kind of basically states that that's the possibility. But, you know, if you come in and get your permit, then no, you don't have to worry about it. But it's those that do it over and over and over again.
If Trent wrote it up, and like I said, I'd like to see the state code referenced in there, just exactly what the, you know,
Yep.
You want me to go look
100-1.
that up?
I think,
So that if somebody wants to look it up, they know where to go.
Zach says it's referenced in there
Yeah.
right now.
Oh, it is
Yeah,
referenced.
three-
Yeah,
okay,
it's
okay,
referenced.
as defined by
Okay.
chapter 331.307.
Yeah,
Okay, I
page-
misunderstood you.
Page 70 of the ordinance has penalties for violation
Did
in
you
it.
send that
addresses
ordinance
that.
to us on there? Did you?
It's,
Yeah, it should be in here, and if you want, I'll have to have.
it's on
I have
the
a,
land use
I got a
website.
printout of it if you want it. Can you hand that?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
There's a printout of the ordinance that they sent.
Colin, could you go to the last page? It's page 76.
It's right in the back, so. Penalties
You
for
got a
violation.
copy of it, Brian?
I'm not using the full ordinance right now, I'm really trying to follow along in the other two. If I pull in a third, I won't be able to chew my gum, it gets to be too much, so. It's all yours, Jim, read away.
Page 70.
So I just looked up, so chapter 331.307 is actually about civil, or I'm sorry, county infractions. So it lists what deems a county infraction. So the reference to the actual fine limits, I'm not sure where that is. A reference to the fine.
Well, that is that same passage. chapter 33107, that's all related.
It's related, but I don't,
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess, I mean, if we wanted to put that in again, in terms of the fine itself, we could do that.
Okay.
I hate to have an ordinance where we're putting people in prison for 30 days.
No, it's just, this is, the purpose of having this in here
never
is.
have a quorum.
Huh?
We never have a quorum.
The purpose is simply to define what is allowed by state code, and that would be the absolute extent of what a local government would be allowed to do for that, and it's just a way of noting in the ordinance that this authority is given to counties, that in order to ensure that the provisions of the ordinance are enforced, that there needs to be some sort of punishment for violation. So rather than specifically stating what the county is going to do, and thereby making any subsequent changes to that result in require an amendment to the ordinance, we just thought it made sense to basically reference what the maximum is allowed by state code. And that's the way it was worded for the floodplain ordinance, for the subdivision ordinance as well.
Where are we right now, where the way it reads and it says as allowed by state code, and the state code is not referenced in the, there's code numbers not referenced in the
current ordinance?
in the current ordinance.
No.
And in the future, there will be fee amounts set by resolution of the board instead of having them listed in the ordinance. That's what Trent thinks like we look at this.
I mean, it says something very similar in the current ordinance, although it doesn't reference state code. And it just says it shall not be fined more than $100. But also, it still has a thing in there about 30 days in prison. So, yeah, what we put in there was just advised by Trent to say what's allowed in state code for fines, and then we would come back with a set of fees.
Yeah,
We don't even have anyway, which would probably be a good thing to.
Probably, I was gonna say, if we're gonna
It's
put
there
that,
somewhere, but we
should-
don't know where it is.
So when this is passed, we should probably have a resolution for that fee schedule.
Yeah, we were planning on that.
Okay.
It's there
That's-
somewhere, I've
that's the next
seen
step.
one somewhere, but I haven't been able to find it
And that
again.
resolution will probably address
Everything.
subdivision and zoning,
Yeah.
both together, so then
And
that way everything's in
floodplain.
one resolution.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that was.
so it had the list of the fees for the permit, and then the fees for a penalty if you don't have a permit.
And there's different permits specific there's just the standard permit for zoning, but then there's also, the fee would be increased in instances where it has to go through a site plan review, in instances where it's a variance or a special use permit, because that requires more staff time and the scheduling of a public hearing with either the zoning commission or the board of adjustment.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm gonna save the rezonings, the map for last. There were a couple of changes that were recommended by the zoning commission. It's on the bottom of that page from the staff report. One was, this is specific to the agricultural district. This is the agricultural zoning district in Division 20. There was I addressed this last time. There's the issue of existing lots that are under the minimum lot size in an A1 district that are already used for residential purposes. That there was an amendment back in the 2000s which changed it so that those lots would be required to follow the setback requirements of an R1 district as opposed to A1, just based on the fact that it's an existing use. The lot has already been split that way and it's already been used for that purpose. It's just, it's allowed because it predates the ordinance, given that it's in an otherwise agricultural area, but it's been developed for residential. So at the request of the zoning commission, we looked into a change there where we amended the language to address a situation where somebody wants, because the key thing there is that requires a lot of record that existed prior to the adoption of the ordinance, which would essentially prohibit anyone from cutting out lots like that in the future. But it makes sense when we're talking about an existing house where somebody wants to split that off and sell separately from the farm ground, conceivably to maximize the continued use of that farm field, that the lot they create could conceivably be under that 2 acre minimum for the A1 district. So this just helps connect the subdivision ordinance with zoning in the sense that if somebody wants to, because essentially that area has already been developed, even though it was all part of one farm property originally. So this just amends it so that for any lot of record of less than 2 acres in size, which either existed prior to the adoption of the ordinance, or for any new lot created to split an existing farmstead from the surrounding farmland, those dwellings shall comply with the regulations of the R1 district. So it's a way of accommodating those existing homes, which were part of a farm initially, but allowing those to be split off and regulated separately, which in a way that really just gets to if they want to build an accessory building or an addition to the house in the future, because for the most part those types of things won't even trigger a zoning permit anyway because the house is already there.
In that first paragraph there's a term that's always given me heartburn. You know, the appropriateness of the land for higher density, anyway, prime farmland. And you've heard me discuss that before. I'm not comfortable with somebody saying,
right,
okay, Brian, you've got farmland that's got a suitability, corn suitability of such. Tom, yours isn't that high. Tom, you can go ahead and sell yours or do what you want with it. Brian, yours is prime farmland. We aren't going to let you do what you want with your farmland. That's I don't think I'm the only one, but I'm extremely uncomfortable with that.
Well, yeah, we've addressed that before, and that's what the board is interested in. When we see no reason in continuing to apply that standard. So and that was since we originally prepared this report anyway.
I appreciate it. I mentioned it earlier, and that's what I
We're
understood. So
gonna
that's
address it, that was just something that was from this memo that was before we discussed it. So.
It would still allow a new development on new lots of at least 2 acres in an A1 district. It's just it would allow even smaller than that in instances where there's already a house there. So, and then the other change relates to landscape buffers around industrial and commercial development when the adjoining district is residential. And so this was when we had a lot of discussion with the zoning commission on about what are the standards for that in terms of the visual buffer that allows for protection against the neighboring properties that are existing residential or are zoned for residential, or when there is a new industrial type facility being developed. And so there were some specific standards that they were interested in having for that in terms of the trees and vegetation used in that instance. So we put down the specific language there about a solid visual barrier not less than 40 feet width and height, and then 1 row of shrubs and 2 rows of trees. And then also when initially planted, the trees need to be at least 6 feet, so that addresses. So we already had something like that in there, but based on our initial discussions with the commission, but there was some further feedback on that, which we adjusted that to provide a little bit more context as well.
Up above, I'm the same one as you, where it says rezonings of property.
Yeah, I was gonna do that last for zoning.
Fair
so,
enough, all right.
I wanted to get through the text stuff first, and then we could switch over to the map.
That's fine.
So if you wanna pull the map up.
Yeah, can I just run over there, Colin, and run the map? On the GIS side?
Sure. So this, for the rezonings, it's in terms of what exactly we're proposing here, it's relatively minimal in terms of, it wouldn't affect any of the existing uses on the properties, and it's really meant to match more what the conditions are today and what is appropriate based on criteria such as the road access, and proximity to other uses. So I just want to note here that the primary change we're looking at between the current and future zoning map is whether a property is zoned residential or agricultural. And as we discussed, simply having it zoned as agricultural is not going to prohibit the development of residential. Just slightly higher lot size there, and which has been decreased from what the ordinance currently requires. The current requirement for minimum lot size in an A1 was, I believe, 5 acres, and we dropped that down to 2. So overall, even whether a property is A1 or R1 doesn't make a huge difference in terms of whether residential would be permitted there. It's just
Sorry, there's a lag here, I'm trying to figure it out.
So simply that the residential areas, the areas that are zoned residential, we want to be consistent with our statement of purpose behind what each of the districts are. In that these are areas that conceivably would be residential of a higher density, which would be more appropriate in areas where that are access to paved roads, close in areas where there's existing residential present. So there are a few instances where we felt that the presence of R1 south of Burlington and west of 61, it seemed like that extended into a large area of farmland that hadn't been developed for residential yet, where it seemed like that was a little aggressive to have all of that as residential. And so it might make more sense to have that as A1, where there's some other areas that like a north side of Golf Course Road, actually where the golf course is now, that are zoned A1, which if that were to ever be redeveloped someday, why are we restricting that to agricultural if it's access to paved road, a golf course road there? So maybe that would make more sense to change that to R1.
Zoned R1 now? It's zoned R1 or A1 now?
The golf course is A1 now.
Okay. Or the golf course, I mean, but the north side of that road. Oh, that is the north side of the road, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So there's some swapping there where some areas are being changed to A1 and some areas are being changed to R1. We also felt that it was appropriate, we'll get into our discussion on the airport height zone as well, that given that there's a large area of farmland just south and west of the airport runway, given that there's concerns about development in proximity to the runway, that it would be appropriate to rezone that from R1 to A1, just so that again, it wouldn't prohibit residential outright, but it would have would not encourage higher density residential development in that area that's so close to the runway. So that's the main reason for making changes there. There's a few instances south of the city where there's a fairly large industrial district present, but it reflects the presence of an old quarry that is no longer operational. There's actually a couple of those, one off of Sullivan Slough, one off of Spring Lake Road. And where in that case, because of the fact that a lot of that is all floodplain anyway, and it's just a closed quarry site, that it would make sense just to have that be A1.
Are you
instead
sure
of
that where you're
I1.
talking about the closed quarry site? I buy a lot of sand from Spring Lake.
Well, there's a lot of areas that are quarry that is actually outside the 2 mile area, where the the properties in question are right along the edge of that by the railroad tracks.
I guess my question would be,
Colin,
I would.
if you want to use my desk, go ahead and use it.
I'm just gonna give him my mouse here, so it's a little easier. for
Oh,
me to
okay,
zoom in and
okay.
out, so.
I, is it possible to get like a before and after map or something to get a, I know Zach's trying to pull it up, but I'm curious.
It's on the website.
So the
It's been sent out.
current and the new
Yeah.
are on the website thing? That's what I was wondering. If it was sent out, I missed it, so, but that's something new.
I think that, wasn't there an old quarry along Sullivan Slough Road?
There was, and that is.
I think that's what he's talking about.
That is defunct, but I was,
Yeah.
and that doesn't bother me, I understand what he's saying about that, I'm talking more, about Sullivan Slough, or about the, Spring Lake, and I only bring that up because there is activity down there, it may not be what it was, and maybe that's, you understand all that, I just wanna point out that they do mine sand, I guess, at the end of that road.
Well, so when we're looking at this, the 2 mile area it actually only takes in a portion of the Spring Lake campground, and so the property I was talking about is there's a little strip in between the campground and the railroad. So there's this whole big thing down
So
here
that's
to
all
the
beyond
south.
it.
Yeah.
I see.
The current operational facility is all outside the zoning area.
Okay.
And so the area we're talking about is just a little strip in between the campground and the railroad, and it's all floodplain anyway.
Pretty popular campground.
Yeah. Well,
It is. I mean, there's people down there, it's full.
Right.
And they got their own little pond there, little lake there, actually. It's busy down there.
Yeah.
I don't think anything you're doing affects that, I'm just saying.
No, it's an existing use, but
Pretty popular.
because it is in a floodplain, we feel having it as agricultural long-term would allow that existing use to continue to be operational, but in the future, if that were to cease operations, that would given the area is flood prone, that would make sense, so. And also, having it not as industrial means that those existing residents there have a protection against encroachment of industrial directly adjacent.
I'm gonna have to look at that area and see what the landowners are and stuff like that. I'll do that, I'll spend
Okay.
some time looking at it. I only say that because then if you start thinking about going the other way, you know, I don't know how much ground they own, but Cessford / OMG or whoever owns that sand pit. And if you go reclassify ground that they own, that might have some value to them from their business standpoint, from I1 to A1, I'm wondering if you're taking away something that they had intentions of using. I don't know, I haven't looked at it, I didn't
Okay.
see this, so I'll look at it.
That would be a taking if you have something that's zoned industrial and you own that land.
And it may not be land they own.
Just
I
rezone. Well, I'm just saying,
haven't looked.
if you did and someone just
Well,
rezoned
and it's important to make the distinction between the zoning classification and the assessment classification, because there's numerous instances where.
I'm not talking about, I'm talking about possibilities of future use.
Okay.
Yeah, it may not be a factor, I'll look at it, I didn't see that and I didn't look at it, so it's my fault.
But there's always a process to rezone
Yeah.
anything too.
Well, I
so.
understand that, but I'm just saying, if you were gonna do that, and I own property that's zoned I1, you said we're gonna rezone it A1, I'd say, no, you're not.
You know, Sullivan Slough is a great example of probably a no-brainer. I think they farmed the field beside the old quarry. I don't know how much of it is A1 and how much of it's I1, but, you know, that hasn't been used as a quarry for a long, long time, and I think it's basically a duck hunting area or a place that guy goes
Basically, it's
fishing.
this piece right here that's got that.
In fact, the Sullivan
Few
Slough
ponds
area is
on
right
it.
across from where we did the road vacations, if I had to guess, if I'm thinking of the right spot.
There is the one instance with the rezoning where there was a property along Highway 61 between 60th and 65th. No, actually, I take that back. I got confused. So it's south of Spirit Hollow by 50th Street. There's a storage business there, and there was originally a small mobile home park there, and that's why the whole thing was zoned R2 multifamily. But when there was a rezoning request, I believe 10 or 15 years ago, when they first developed that storage business to B1, but I think it looks like one of those situations where it would have made sense, since this person owns both properties. What would be the reason of keeping this one as R2 multifamily when this one is C1 and it's the same owner? And so it sounds like it was possibly a mistake, in the sense that this is the parcel where the building would be located, and so that's the legal description they put in their request, even though there's storage here, outdoor storage here, there's a billboard here.
Is that a batch plant? Did there used to be a batch plant there?
Yeah, there's still a batch, there used to be a batch plant still down that direction. I don't know if that's.
It's further north.
Is it okay?
No, this used to be a mobile home park originally.
I remember, I think the board had me take them down there. I think they had a complaint about something down there. I don't remember, it's been too long, but I guess
They had some old trailers still down there that they needed to move out of there.
that might be it. It's been too long.
8 years ago or so.
Yeah,
I
it's been
remember
a
going
while.
down. It's just before you drop down over the hill on the left side of the road.
Yeah.
That's what it is today, so it's R2
Yeah.
for the top parcel, and kind of wrapped around, and then the back one
It's
commercial.
Is it all still the same landowner?
Mm-hmm.
And is it the same guy that came in and did the application and stuff? I assume, since he built a business?
Believe
so. I
I'm
don't
only
know.
asking because it'd be an easy phone call or letter, just asking if he had any logic for why he only applied for a portion of it for his property.
If he has a reason.
You're saying you don't have any idea why, but you assume it was a mistake. Maybe it was, but maybe it wasn't. I don't have any idea,
Yeah.
but.
I mean, his operation goes on both, and then R2 would be allowed in a C1, correct?
Yeah.
So you still get the same use in it.
Oh, well, okay, if they get the same use, that's fine. All I was saying is you could probably find out, but I'm good either way. Kind of a hole right in the middle of the rest of it.
And so like commercial, the way it's set up is something like commercial will still allow the same uses that you get in residential districts. So.
But it's
So you still
obvious
get the
that
same use, but it's
the current
used as a
designation
commercial
reflects
use.
a use that's no longer present, is the key thing there.
So.
Well, that could be true for quite a few places that we're not even aware of.
Yeah.
Given that it's just this one isolated parcel, though, that kind of really sticks out visually when you see that on there.
Anything else, or any other questions, or comments?
If you had any questions on anything else, I'll welcome that. That's all I had for at least the items we wanted to go over in the staff report. So, but if there's anything else you in review in the ordinance that you want to address, feel free.
I feel like I know it well enough to ask a bunch more questions. So, I will try to look at this map, so, especially if Austin's got them on GIS.
Yep. Yeah, it's got the current and the proposed, and then on the website, it's got what Jared has right there, where it's got them
Good.
together, and I think it even has comments in there about some of the changes.
Okay.
Any other thoughts? not quite as exciting as that compensation commission.
Well, to be fair, you
report.
guys aren't anywhere near as entertaining as
I forgot donuts again too, so, you know.
So no offense, but there's that.
Okay.
You gotta remember, that was a lawyer too.
Well, it's hard to forget that with Dan around.
Well, do you guys wanna try and tackle this airport one? I can,
So we're that to the,
we've been through subdivision, floodplain and zoning.
airport.
I think
Floodplain's already been approved, so that's.
Airport.
I've got a presentation that I've presented, City of Burlington.
Have we got
and
it?
for
Maybe
West
we don't
Burlington.
have it.
I don't have the airport one printed off. It probably was in there and I didn't print it.
How much is there?
It's 15 slides,
Oh, so
and
you
it's like
guys-
it's like an overview.
So you don't have an actual policy yet, you just gotta lead into it kind of thing.
No, we have the ordinance too. It's up here. And if you want, I can print these off, or we can try and print these off real quick. I wasn't at the office, sorry.
You know, to print them off, so we can look at them, and then maybe we can put this on till next week.
And then do the presentation.
Then do
The presentation's an overview of what's in the ordinance,
Yeah.
so.
That's, I agree with Jim, if you've got that printed off, we can look at that. If you roll through it kind of fast, you know, just hit the high spots or something like that, we could probably do
Yeah.
that, but it'd be nice to have that before we go through it.
Okay.
I have a hard enough time picking some of that stuff out anyway.
However you guys wanna do it.
If you wanna just go through the highlights or anything and then print that out for us, how's that, Joe? And then we
Sounds
can get
like
that next week or the week
Yep.
after, whenever.
Is it on an email that we have already, Zach?
I don't remember.
Okay, because if it is, I'll print it out at the office, that's what
And it
I'm
was
saying.
in the, it probably is, cause this memo we sent to the board, it's got the link to the ordinance and the presentation. But I can resend it.
It's on
Well,
the website,
I'm
too.
just asking, because I can look at it there.
And then the key thing to keep in mind with this one is this is a brand new ordinance as opposed to the other two which are being amended. And then this is also one where it would overlap between the other jurisdictions of Burlington and West Burlington specific to this topic. So it's one where they are adopted individually by each community, but it is something that's going to involve the same general enforcement in each of the communities with regards to heights within the airport approach zones.
Yeah, how about I'll go through a couple of these slides that just kind of go over some of the background and why.
Okay.
And maybe even a couple that cover a few basic things in the ordinance, but then we'll print it off so you can look at it and then finish it up next week. So, to start out, this first slide I have, why are we doing this? So this was a request by Southeast Iowa Regional Airport. And this is like 2 years ago too. I don't know if you remember, they came to one of the meetings and talked about doing this and made a request to you guys and then also Burlington and West Burlington. And they actually approached us up front and said, can you put this ordinance together for us? And we told them, why don't you go to all the entities first and talk to them to see if they want to adopt something, and then if they do, we'll help you put it together. So that was really kind of the process. So they went around and made that request to Burlington, West Burlington, and Des Moines County about updating approach zone ordinances for land use issues and threats that they had around the airport. That could impact both funding they receive from FAA or just the operations they have, could possibly have to shut down a runway or something like that. So of the 3 entities that are involved here, City of Burlington has an existing airport regulation. I'd have to pull it up, I don't remember the date. They haven't updated it since like 1960 or something. I mean, it references some map that they can't even find. and don't have, so they're just completely out of date. And then there's no references in West Burlington or Des Moines County, either zoning ordinances or just a standalone ordinance, anything about airport operations. So kind of generally what the idea of the ordinance is to do is to ensure that development around the airport, and you talked about the map earlier, I'll show you the map here in a second. So basically development in those boundaries is compatible with flight patterns, help the safety of the residents in the community in the rural areas, and passengers flying in and out of the airport. And then hopefully and ultimately it'll allow the airport to continue their operations as normal, keep the runways open, and keep all their funding that comes through to the airport. So everything that's in the ordinance that we'll print off for you is based on Iowa Code Section 329, airport zoning, which allows allows municipalities to zone around airports for preventing air hazards and height restrictions. So everything is based on this section of Iowa Code. It's its own standalone section specifically about airport regulations. So Burlington, I already mentioned, has an existing ordinance, so this is gonna replace the one they have. The one that when we came and presented, and talked about this at one point, that this would be standalone ordinance because we could try to do it in zoning, but the boundaries don't match. Some of the airport stuff goes beyond the 2-mile boundary that we just talked about from the zoning ordinance, so we set it up as a standalone ordinance. And then West Burlington's gonna set theirs up as part of their ordinance, zoning ordinance. Everything uses the same language and same maps, so everything's consistent between all 3 communities. And then everything kind of beyond this point is an overview of what's in the ordinance. So I'll go through maybe these next 2 or 3 because I think they'll be straightforward enough. If I can read this little bubble. It's in my way. So the first part of the ordinance has a section about the purpose and intent, and I've highlighted just some of the key things, and these are things I already just kind of talked about. Everything is established under Chapter 329 of the Iowa Code. One of the keys is an obstruction may affect existing and future instrument approach minimums. Those are all the things when you see, if you drive by the airport at night, you see all the lights and all the stuff flashing. That's all the instrument approach things that they have to assist aircrafts in landing and taking off. So it says an obstruction may affect existing and future instrument approach minimums of the airport, and an obstruction may reduce the size of the area available for landing, takeoff, and maneuvering of aircraft, thus tending to destroy or impair the utility of the airport and the public investment therein. So accordingly, this ordinance is established to do the following 3 things. And the main one that I highlight here is prevent the establishment of hazards to air navigation and incompatible land use in public airport approach areas and surrounding areas in the interest of public health, safety, and welfare. So really what we're trying to do is in these zones that are defined, which I'll show you here in a second, we're just trying to keep mainly tall structures out of here at a certain height. There's a few things on use, but they're very specific things that, not that they couldn't be developed, but I find to be very rare. So that's the purpose and intent statement. There's a definition section that goes through, lists out 19 things that are defined. I'm not gonna go through and read all of those, but if you wanna look at the ordinance and read through them, you can do that. So then this is probably where I'll end, I'll just highlight this. So it establishes the approach zones, and there's 4 different zones. The approach overlay zone, the transitional overlay zone, and those are specific to each of the runway. And so like a north-south runway, it's actually considered, if you're coming in from the south to the north, that's one runway, and then north to south is considered another runway, and same thing with the diagonal. So they consider actually 4 separate runways, so there's 4 definitions for each of those. They're all slightly different, and they're very technical. I have an example of one, but I'm not gonna read through all those. So there's those 2 that are specific to the runways, and then there's a horizontal overlay zone and a conical overlay zone. So you mentioned a map earlier about FAA, and this is a little blurry, and this is on the GIS site too, it might be easier if I pull it up on there, but, this is all generated by FAA, and these are all of the different zones. So this is a two-dimensional map that,
And I've seen that when the plane comes in, obviously the closer it gets, you know, that it's gonna get pretty low.
yeah, so this is a 2D map that just shows kind of what the boundaries are, east, west, north, south. But technically, if we're gonna regulate something, there is a 3D component to this. And so, I'll actually go ahead one here. We've got some tweaking to do with Austin at GIS, but we started, this would be for enforcement purpose only, but there's these maps that he's created that actually show then what the heights would be based on the very technical definitions. So, and I can kind of read one here for the sample I've got. It specifically says beginning at 200 feet beyond the end of the runway. So here's the end of the runway down here, and you go 200 feet. So at 200 feet at the end of the runway and centered at this, there's a thing at the bottom here, I don't know if I can get rid of that, there we go. And centered on the extended center line of the runway, so 200 feet here from the center. The inner edge of the zone is 500 feet, so we got this 500 feet wide, so 200 feet from the end of the runway, it's 500 feet wide. Expanding uniformly to an outer edge of 3,500 feet, so I don't have this all the way up, but if you were to go to the very end of it, it's 3,500 feet wide. The altitude of the inner edge is the same as the altitude of the runway. The floor of the zone rises from the inner edge 1 foot for each 34 foot of distance. So this is where you get this little 30, so every 34 feet, the height goes up 1 foot. So as you're going out, so by the time, it's kind of hard to read, but by the time you get out, if somebody were trying to build something out in here, it's around 30 feet, which would be a, 2.5 to 3 story building or something like that.
Okay,
And
perfect.
then the further you get out, it gets all the way up to hundreds and hundreds of feet. So that kind of gives you the general idea of.
And you'll get something that printed out for us.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Had a cramp.
Oh,
So we'll stop there and then we can.
I have a question for Colin.
Yeah.
Colin, I got an IT, and maybe you saw this, maybe whatever. Some of the major airlines, they were talking, they didn't want 5G so close
Yeah, reading
to an
about
airport.
this.
Did you see that, that apparently there's a chance that interferes with communications on the, is that a thing, or is that something they're crying about, or is that an actual thing, or does anybody know?
I don't think so. I could see them, trying to be safe or whatever and be skeptical on that stuff, so. 5G is a stronger signal. I don't feel that would interfere with what's in the aircraft, but I don't know. Basically, all 5G is a stronger Wi-Fi signal, allows you to pull faster speeds, whether that's over a cellular network or over a wireless network in your home. 5G doesn't have as much range, so you typically have to have more access points put in place to have wider coverage, but it gives you faster speeds and a stronger signal. That's really the only difference between that and what we deal with right now with like 4G with our cell phones and things of that nature. It's just faster, much faster speed, stronger signal, but less range, so.
I just saw that American Airlines and three of the airlines said that they didn't want 5G within so close to an airport.
This stuff's already in Japan, Korea, China.
Yeah.
They don't seem to have a problem with it. Why is it? I don't know. I'll stay off my soapbox.
No, that's fine. That's why I ask you. They,
This stuff's already in other countries.
I didn't know that, so then that's interesting.
I don't know why our businesses are, I don't know.
Yeah, I read something about it a couple weeks ago. It sounded like they were just gonna limit it at some of the busier airports like in New York, Chicago, and do a little further study in the meantime, but yeah, I don't know. I have no idea if it's really an issue or not. I've been reading about it, I've seen it, and it kinda intrigues me why, what the issue is.
When you were talking, I just made a mental note to myself to ask Colin if he.
There's big airports in Asia, in these Asian countries, and they've had this stuff for years. It doesn't seem to affect them, but I don't know.
Maybe their planes have better technology or something too, I don't know.
You know, it's amazing how low some of them planes get coming in when they're headed in, when they land on the 36, well, the northbound, which is 360, coming in over them houses out there on Hagman and that.
Yep.
You know, well, you probably hear them.
Honestly, they're,
I live
honestly, I
over
live
by
right
the
there.
airport, and I don't hear it too often.
When the wife and I moved out there,
Yeah.
that was kind of our concern, is we were wondering, you know, how bad that was gonna be, but really, even though we're right there next to the airport, it's not bad at all.
We lived right across the Summer Street for years there, and that's what we talked about. And after about 3 days, I don't
kinda-
ever remember even
Yeah, just-
hearing them after that.
I mean, you hear them every once in a while, you know, sometimes, but it's never been an issue for us.
Well,
I live
I don't
down there
think
on
that
Navajo Street, and I don't.
the noise
never
would be
notice
as
it.
bad
It's
as
more the
that.
wind that comes flying through, cause it's so open.
Pretty,
Yeah, but I just,
they're coming right over all them houses that malfunction. I mean, they can wipe out. That's what I'd worry about if you're in the flight path. But you're not quite in the flight path, you're off to the,
Outside a little bit.
off to the west, yeah.
I don't know exactly where it was, sorry, this is just, the one thing that kind of triggered the whole discussion about this, there was a kind of a proposed development somewhere right along Mason Road, kind of
You don't
right
have
here.
to right before you get,
That's kind of what triggered the
to
whole
the right here,
conversation.
yeah,
On the
right in
transitional
there.
zone.
Yeah,
And then, well, there was one years ago where they,
Beverly's Place.
yes, thank you, Shane.
there was
I didn't
one.
know you was still there.
There was a cul-de-sac somewhere to the east that was developed like 20 years ago in the flight path, and that was another one that they
yeah.
brought up.
40 years ago, they had right across from the airport, there was a bar there, I wanted to have gone there, but they had the roof, you could sit on the roof, they had, tables and so you could sit on the roof and cocktail.
Tender trap.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't remember what they called it at first.
Hooligans? Was it hooligans?
I don't remember what it was, but
Yeah,
this has been a
the
long time
airport
ago.
bought that whenever they,
Yeah.
whenever they went to tax sale or whatever.
Yeah.
Hooligans was the
They
last
pretty
name.
much
It used to
buy
be
out
the
anything
airport.
that's over there.
Years ago, it was the airport inn or something like that.
Something like that, but they had, like I said, you could sit on the roof.
Bought it.
Yeah, so the other thing Jared was referencing, there's this Park Place cul-de-sac right here where there's some issue where that was, I think they've been able to adjust it, but one of those approach zones was in that space and they built those houses in there and they were
Yeah.
supposed to, and
Yeah, I think the airport was having issues that not everybody was complying with their approach.
but
30
now, basically anything that's in those zones, they go and buy it
Yeah.
and get rid of it, so.
And over 30 years ago, I spent a lot of time out there at the airport surveying with Jerry, doing all the approach zones. There was a map probably taller than you that showed the whole area, and we'd draw on, every time they bought an approach zone,
Oh,
we'd
yeah.
draw it on there.
Did you carry a box with you to stand on when you were drawing on the top part of that map?
No, it laid on the table, the
Oh.
drafting table, which people don't use anymore.
Other than the sore stuff.
Well, thank you, yeah, if you get.
We'll
you
finish
guys
that
get
next week, I mean,
email
we're
it.
halfway through the discussion now, so it won't take very long.
Okay.
Well, it'll depend on how many questions you got, I guess.
Well, yeah, and if you get something to look at a little bit.
Maybe can we maybe just try and print some real quick? while we're
Well,
here?
do that.
Shane, we'll
You can
see ya. Have a
print
good
it there or
week.
email it to
Or if
the
you'd rather
auditor's
have it
office, and they
email.
can print it out and we can pick it up, whatever's convenient for you.
For what?
Print out the,
I think it's about
We're
10
done, aren't we?
pages.
Yeah.
Yep, we're done for today. Thank you, Shane.
Thanks.
thanks, Shane.
See you guys.